Welcome, dear listener, to Dream Nest Stories, a gentle place where worries soften, thoughts grow quiet, and stories carry you slowly toward rest. And tonight, as the world outside grows still and the night wraps itself around your window like a comforting shawl, I invite you to settle in, loosen your shoulders, ease your breath, and allow this calm Sherlock Holmes tale to unfold at its own unhurried pace. A story not meant to rush the mind, but to soothe it. Not meant to startle, but to gently intrigue. Not meant to keep you awake, but to guide you softly towards sleep. And so, with every word, let yourself sink deeper into comfort, deeper into calm, deeper into rest, as we begin part one of our cozy bedtime mystery. The fog lay thick over London that evening, soft and silvery, drifting lazily through the narrow streets as though the city itself were exhaling after a long day. Gas lamps glowing warmly like distant stars caught low to the ground, their light blurred and mellowed by the mist. And somewhere beneath that quiet veil, Dr. John Watson moved at a steady pace, his footsteps measured, his breath calm but purposeful, his thoughts gently troubled by a message that had arrived earlier that day. A message written in a familiar hand yet carrying an unfamiliar weight. A summons from Baker Street that spoke not of curiosity or excitement, but of weakness, illness, and urgency. And though Watson had faced danger many times besides Sherlock Holmes, though he had witnessed deception, darkness, and crime in countless forms, there was something uniquely unsettling about this quiet request. Something that tugged at his heart more than any urgent case ever had. As he walked, the sounds of London softened around him, carriage wheels rolling distantly, voices hushed, doors closing for the night, the city slowly surrendering to sleep, and Watson felt himself mirroring that rhythm, slowing his thoughts, steadying his pulse, reminding himself that calm was a form of strength, that whatever awaited him behind the familiar door of 221B Baker Street would be faced with care, patience, and compassion. The building emerged from the fog like a memory made solid, warm brick, dark windows, and that well-known doorway which had welcomed him so many times before. And as he climbed the steps, each one felt heavier than usual, not with fear, but with concern, the kind that comes when we care deeply for someone who has always seemed untouchable, unbreakable, brilliant beyond harm. Mrs. Hudson opened the door quietly, her kind eyes clouded with worry, her movements gentle as though the house itself were fragile, and she spoke in a soft voice, explaining that Mr. Holmes had been resting poorly, refusing meals, refusing visitors, refusing even comfort. And Watson felt a slow ache settle in his chest, not sharp, not painful, but heavy, like a stone resting in still water. Inside, Baker Street was dim and hushed, curtains drawn, lamps turned low. The familiar sitting room transformed into a space of shadows and quiet breaths. The fire reduced to glowing embers that pulsed gently, offering warmth without sound, and there, upon the sofa where Holmes had so often lounged in thought, lay a figure both familiar and strangely altered. Sherlock Holmes himself, his long frame thin and motionless, his sharp features softened by exhaustion, his skin pale beneath the flicker of lamplight, his eyes half-lidded and distant, as though looking inward rather than out. Watson approached slowly, instinctively mindful of his own breathing, of the quiet of the room, of the delicate stillness that surrounded his friend. And when Holmes spoke, his voice was faint, dry, and worn, stripped of its usual confidence, and yet still unmistakably his, asking Watson to keep his distance, warning of a rare illness, something dangerous, something best faced alone. Watson felt conflict rise within him, the steady logic of a doctor clashing gently with the loyalty of a friend. And yet he respected Holmes enough to listen, to pause, to observe rather than act, reminding himself that sometimes presence alone is a form of healing. Sometimes simply being there is enough. The clock on the mantel ticked softly, each second stretching into calm awareness. And as Watson settled into a nearby chair, he allowed himself to simply be, to watch the slow rise and fall of Holmes' chest, to listen to the fire's quiet warmth, to feel the night deepen outside the windows. And in that stillness, something soothing emerged, a reminder that even the sharpest minds need rest, that even the strongest spirits can grow weary, and that there is no weakness in pausing, in lying still, in letting the world slow down around you. Holmes drifted into uneasy sleep, murmuring fragments of thought, names without faces, places half-remembered, ideas floating like clouds through a drowsy sky. And Watson felt a gentle tenderness as he listened, recognizing the signs of a mind that never truly rests, even when the body demands it, and he hoped, quietly and sincerely, that this night might bring some measure of peace, some small restoration. Outside, the fog thickened, muffling the city further, cocooning Baker Street in silence, and inside, the hours passed not with urgency, but with patience, the kind that invites sleep rather than resists it, the kind that reminds us that night is not something to conquer, but something to sink into, to allow, to trust. Watson's thoughts grew softer, less clinical, more reflective, his concern easing into a steady calm as he resolved to stay, to watch, to wait, knowing that whatever mystery lay beneath Holmes' condition would reveal itself in time, and that for now, there was nothing required of him but presence, quiet, and care. And as the fire breathed gently, the clock whispered steadily, and London slept beneath its blanket of fog. Baker Street held its own small pocket of stillness, a place where even danger paused, where intellect rested, where friendship stood watch, and where you, dear listener, can allow your own thoughts to slow, your own breathing to deepen, your own body to relax, knowing that you are safe, that this story will carry you gently, and that rest is not something you must chase, but something that will meet you exactly where you are, as part one fades softly into the calm of the night. As part one fades softly into the calm of the night, the stillness within Baker Street deepens, and the silence becomes almost tender, wrapping the room like a blanket pulled gently to the chin. And in that quiet, Dr. Watson remains seated, his posture relaxed yet attentive, his presence steady and reassuring, as though by simply staying awake he can guard his friend from the darker edges of the night. and welcome once more, dear listener, to Dream Nest Stories, where we continue this gentle journey, allowing curiosity to drift lightly through the mind while comfort leads the way towards sleep. The fire has settled into a soft glow now, no longer crackling, only breathing warmth into the room, and the shadows dance slowly along the walls, unhurried, patient, as Sherlock Holmes lies motionless, his breathing shallow but steady, each breath a quiet promise that the night is passing exactly as it should. Watson's thoughts move carefully, not racing, not pressing, but floating like leaves on calm water. And as he watches Holmes, he begins to notice small details that stir his professional curiosity, not sharply, not urgently, but gently, like a thought arising just before sleep. The way Holmes' fingers twitch faintly as if counting invisible clues. The way his brow tightens and relaxes in rhythm with his breath. The way his illness seems to ebb and flow rather than progress in any clear direction. Time stretches, soft and forgiving, and Watson allows himself to breathe deeply, reminding himself that patience is often the greatest form of care, that the body and mind have their own wisdom, their own slow intelligence, and that healing, like sleep, cannot be forced. The clock continues its quiet ticking, no longer marking urgency, only marking presence. Each second a small anchor holding the room in calm awareness. And outside, the fog presses gently against the windows, turning the world beyond into a dreamlike blur. As though Baker Street exists in its own peaceful pocket, separate from time, separate from worry. Holmes stirs slightly, murmuring a few words too soft to fully understand, and Watson leans forward just enough to listen, careful not to disturb him, hearing fragments that sound less like pain and more like thought. Names spoken without fear, ideas shaped without strain, and Watson feels a subtle shift within himself, a quiet intuition forming, not suspicion, not alarm, but a sense that all is not exactly as it appears. Still, he does nothing, says nothing, choosing instead the comfort of stillness, trusting that clarity, like dawn, arrives gently when it is ready. As the night deepens, a knock comes softly at the door, so light it almost blends into the quiet, and Mrs. Hudson answers it with the same care she has shown all evening, ushering in a visitor whose presence carries a faint ripple of tension into the room. A man from Holmes' past, drawn here by a message filled with urgency and concern. And Watson observes quietly as the man steps inside, his expression guarded, his movements cautious, his eyes drawn immediately to the frail figure upon the sofa. Holmes does not rise, does not greet him, does not display the sharp awareness for which he is known, instead remaining still, weak, distant. And Watson senses the careful balance of the moment, like a breath held gently between inhale and exhale. The visitor speaks softly, his voice tinged with something difficult to name, perhaps resentment, perhaps curiosity, perhaps satisfaction. And as he approaches Holmes, he leans closer, convinced that the great detective is truly fading, truly powerless, and in that closeness, words begin to flow more freely than they should. confidence loosening the tongue, pride softening caution. Watson listens without judgment, his mind calm, his heart steady, noticing how Holmes' stillness draws truth from the shadows, how silence invites revelation, and how sometimes the quietest moments hold the greatest power. Holmes' eyes flutter open briefly, unfocused, glassy, and the visitor steps back slightly, reassured rather than alarmed by what he sees, mistaking stillness for defeat, weakness for surrender. And Watson feels a strange mix of concern and admiration, realizing that this fragile appearance may be more intentional than it seems. The room feels suspended in time, the fire glowing softly, the clock ticking gently, the night holding its breath. And within that suspension, Watson begins to understand that this illness, this isolation, this refusal of help may itself be part of something larger, something carefully shaped, something deeply thoughtful. Yet even with this understanding forming, there is no fear in the room, only a quiet intensity, a slow unfolding, like a story that reveals itself word by word rather than all at once. The visitor eventually takes his leave, his footsteps fading down the stairs, the door closing with a soft finality that feels less like an ending and more like a pause. And once again, Baker Street settles into silence, the kind that hums gently rather than presses heavily. Watson remains where he is, his breathing slow, his shoulders relaxed, his presence grounded, and after a long, unbroken moment, Holmes' eyes open fully, the fevered glaze softening, the sharp intelligence beneath beginning to glimmer faintly, not brightly, not urgently, but with quiet assurance. Watson does not speak yet, sensing that this moment does not require words, only understanding, only patience, only trust. And in that shared silence, something warm and reassuring passes between them. A reminder that even in deception, there can be care. Even in darkness, there can be calm. The night continues its gentle passage, the fog outside slowly thinning, the world preparing for dawn. And within Baker Street, the tension that once lingered now dissolves into a deeper calm, a sense that whatever danger has brushed past, it has done so quietly, without disturbance, without chaos. And as you, dear listener, rest within this softly unfolding moment, you may notice your own thoughts slowing, your breathing deepening, your body growing heavier and more comfortable, carried by the rhythm of the story, soothed by its gentle mystery, reassured by its quiet wisdom, knowing that just like Watson, you do not need to solve anything tonight. You do not need to hurry or understand or act. You only need to rest, to listen, to allow the night to hold you. As Parta settles softly into stillness and prepares the way for what comes next. As Parta settles softly into stillness and prepares the way for what comes next, the quiet within Baker Street does not break but deepens, becoming warmer, slower, and more forgiving, like the moment just before true sleep arrives. And here, dear listener, within this gentle hush of dream nest stories, we continue onward without hurry, without sharp turns, allowing the story to unfold the way dreams do, naturally, calmly, one feeling at a time. The door downstairs has long since closed, the visitor's presence fading like a shadow at dawn, and the room returns fully to its peaceful rhythm. The fire glowing low, the clock ticking softly, the night breathing evenly beyond the curtains. Dr. Watson remains seated, his body relaxed now, no longer tense with worry. His thoughts moving in slow circles rather than sharp lines, and he watches Sherlock Holmes with a new understanding, a quiet respect for the stillness that now surrounds his friend. Holmes lies quietly, his breathing smoother than before, deeper, steadier, and though his eyes are closed, there is a subtle change in his presence. Something calm and deliberate, as if the mask of illness has loosened just enough to allow comfort back in. The air in the room feels lighter, less burdened, and Watson senses that the danger which once hovered has drifted away, leaving behind only the soft echo of its passing. Time moves differently now, no longer stretching with uncertainty, but flowing gently like a slow river under moonlight. And Watson allows himself to lean back in his chair, his shoulders easing, his breath matching the slow rhythm of the room. He reflects quietly on the nature of strength, how it does not always roar or rush, how sometimes it lies still, patient, waiting, and how intelligence, when paired with calm, can move through the world without leaving a ripple. Holmes stirs slightly, not in distress, but in rest, turning his head just enough to catch the warmth of the firelight on his face. And for the first time that night, Watson sees color return faintly to his features, a sign not of triumph, but of balance being restored. Outside, the fog thins gradually, its edges softening, revealing glimpses of the sleeping street beyond. Empty, quiet, safe, and the city itself seems to sigh, releasing the tension of the day as it sinks deeper into night. Inside, Baker Street feels like a sanctuary, a place suspended between waking and dreaming, where even the sharpest minds are allowed to rest. Watson's thoughts drift toward memories, shared adventures, long conversations by the fire, moments of silence that spoke louder than words, and he feels gratitude settle warmly in his chest, gratitude for friendship, for trust, for the unspoken understanding that needs no explanation. Holmes opens his eyes slowly, not abruptly, not urgently, but with the calm awareness of someone waking from a light, peaceful sleep. And when he looks at Watson, there is no strain there now, no fevered haze, only quiet clarity, softened by fatigue. He does not speak yet, and Watson does not press him, recognizing that this moment belongs to stillness, to recovery, to the gentle re-entry into awareness. The clock continues its steady whisper, marking not time lost or gained, but time simply passing. And each tick feels like reassurance, like a heartbeat reminding the room that all is well. Holmes closes his eyes again, not from weakness, but from comfort, allowing himself the rare luxury of rest. And Watson remains beside him, a calm presence, a silent guardian, content in the knowledge that sometimes the greatest victories leave no sound behind. The fire dims further, embers glowing softly, casting a warm amber light that flickers gently across the walls. And the shadows it creates are no longer mysterious or threatening, but familiar, comforting, like shapes seen with half-closed eyes just before sleep. Watson's breathing deepens unconsciously, his body sinking into the chair, his thoughts loosening their grip, and he feels himself becoming part of the room's rhythm. Part of the quiet story unfolding without effort. In this space, there is no need to analyze, no need to deduce, no need to solve. Only the simple act of being present, of allowing calm to exist without question. Holmes shifts once more, settling more comfortably, and the faintest hint of a smile touches his lips. Not a smile of victory or pride, but one of quiet satisfaction, as though he knows that the most difficult part has passed and that the night has done its work. Outside, a distant bell marks the hour, its sound softened by fog and distance, and then silence returns, deeper and more complete than before. Watson closes his eyes briefly, just for a moment, trusting the stillness, trusting the night. And when he opens them again, everything remains exactly as it should be. The world has not rushed forward, the calm has not broken, and the story continues to flow gently onward. And as you, dear listener, rest within this peaceful pause, you may feel your own body growing heavier, your thoughts drifting more slowly, your awareness softening like fog under moonlight, knowing that you are safe, that nothing is required of you now, that just like Holmes and Watson, you can rest within the quiet confidence that all is unfolding as it should. And as part 3 settles into this deep, comforting calm, it carries you effortlessly closer to sleep. Where the mind rests, the heart feels light, and the night holds you gently until morning. As part 3 settles into deep, comforting calm and carries the mind closer to sleep, the night within Baker Street grows even softer, quieter, and more forgiving, like the final moments before drifting fully into rest. And here, dear listener, within the gentle embrace of Dream Nest Stories, we continue without haste, without sharp edges, allowing warmth, clarity, and reassurance to flow naturally. The fire has faded to a quiet glow, its embers pulsing slowly like a resting heartbeat, and the room is wrapped in a tender stillness that feels protective rather than empty. Dr. Watson sits peacefully, no longer watching with concern, but with calm assurance, his breathing slow and even, his thoughts resting lightly rather than pressing forward. Sherlock Holmes stirs once more, this time with intention, not weakness, drawing a deeper breath, allowing his eyes to open fully, clear and steady. The sharp brilliance softened by fatigue, but no longer hidden behind illness. He shifts carefully, rising just enough to rest more comfortably, and the transformation is gentle. Unspoken, like dawn arriving without announcing itself. Holmes speaks at last, his voice low and measured, not strained, not hurried, explaining quietly that the danger has passed, that the illness was never meant to deceive the body, but to mislead the eye. And Watson listens without interruption, his expression calm, his trust complete. The explanation unfolds slowly, deliberately, each word chosen with care, describing a carefully studied condition, symptoms mimicked with precision. A performance shaped not by vanity, but by necessity. And as Holmes speaks, there is no pride in his tone, only thoughtful reflection and acknowledgement of risk balanced by conviction. Watson feels no anger rise within him, only relief, and perhaps a touch of gentle exasperation softened by affection, the kind reserved for those we understand deeply. And he responds not with sharp words, but with a quiet reminder that even the most brilliant minds are allowed rest, are allowed care, are allowed concern from those who stand beside them. Holmes accepts this with a faint, tired smile, his eyes closing briefly, not in avoidance, but in appreciation, as though the weight of explanation itself has lifted. The clock continues its steady rhythm, no longer marking tension or suspense, only continuity. And outside, the fog has thinned further, allowing the first subtle hints of dawn to soften the edges of the world. Pale light presses gently against the curtains, not demanding entry, only suggesting that morning will arrive when it is ready. Watson rises quietly to tend to the fire, adding just enough warmth to maintain comfort without breaking the stillness. And the simple act feels grounding, reassuring, a reminder that small gestures often hold the greatest meaning. Holmes reclines once more, his breathing deep and even, his body finally surrendering to genuine rest, and the room seems to exhale in response, releasing the last traces of tension into the quiet air. There is no urgency now, no danger lurking in shadow, only the gentle unfolding of recovery, of understanding, of trust reaffirmed. Watson returns to his chair, settling back with a soft sigh, his thoughts no longer circling questions, but drifting toward peace. And he allows himself to simply sit within the moment, appreciating its simplicity, its calm, its warmth. Outside, a bird stirs faintly, its presence barely perceptible, a whisper of life awakening far too gently to disturb the night. And inside, Baker Street remains wrapped in its cocoon of comfort. Holmes speaks once more, just a few words, thanking Watson not for intervention, but for patience, for presence, for quiet faith. And Watson responds with a nod, knowing that some bonds do not require elaborate expression. The fire glows steadily, the light soft and amber, smoothing the room's edges, turning shadows into familiar shapes that invite rather than unsettle. Watson's eyes grow heavy, not with exhaustion, but with contentment, and he allows them to close briefly, trusting that the night will hold steady, that nothing needs his immediate attention. In this space, strength feels gentle, intelligence feels kind, and rest feels earned. And as you, dear listener, drift alongside this calm revelation, you may notice your own body relaxing further, your breathing slowing, your thoughts loosening their hold, understanding that clarity does not always arrive with drama. That resolution can be soft, quiet, and deeply reassuring. The night continues its graceful retreat, the world preparing for morning without rush. And as part 4 settles into this peaceful understanding, it invites you to release the day, to trust the stillness, and to sink comfortably into the restful quiet that carries you ever closer to sleep. as part 4 gently releases into peaceful understanding. The quiet within Baker Street becomes complete, full, and deeply comforting, like the final exhale before sleep fully takes hold. And here, dear listener, within the calm embrace of Dream Nest Stories, we arrive softly at the closing moments of our story, unhurried, unbroken, and wrapped in warmth. The fire has settled into a steady glow, no longer flickering, no longer shifting, simply offering its quiet heat to the room, and Sherlock Holmes rests easily now, his breathing slow and even, his features relaxed, the sharp edges of effort and intensity softened by genuine rest. Dr. Watson remains nearby, not as a guardian on watch, but as a friend at peace, his posture loose, his mind unburdened, allowing the silence to be exactly what it is, complete and reassuring. Outside, the first light of morning touches the fog-draped street, pale and gentle, easing into the world without urgency, and the sounds of London stir faintly, distant and subdued, as though the city itself wishes to respect the calm that still lingers within Baker Street. Watson rises quietly and moves to the window, drawing the curtain back just enough to let a soft ribbon of dawn slip into the room, illuminating familiar shapes, books resting patiently on shelves, the mantel clock keeping its steady rhythm, the sofa where Holmes sleeps peacefully. And in that light, everything feels settled, resolved, exactly as it should be. Holmes stirs once, a small movement of comfort rather than wakefulness, and a faint, contented smile touches his lips, the smile of someone whose mind has finally found stillness. Watson returns to his chair, allowing himself a moment of reflection, feeling gratitude not only for the outcome of the night, but for the quiet moments within it, the patience, the trust, the reminder that rest is not something we earn through effort, but something we receive when we allow ourselves to slow. The night's tension has dissolved completely now, leaving behind only warmth, companionship, and the soft certainty that all dangers have passed without leaving a mark. The clock ticks on, not loudly, not insistently, but gently, like a lullaby marking the rhythm of peace. And the fire breathes warmth into the room one last time before morning takes over its duty. Watson closes his eyes briefly, resting in that gentle balance between night and day, aware that this moment, quiet and unremarkable on the surface, is one of the most meaningful, a moment where nothing needs to be done, nothing needs to be solved, and nothing is missing. And as the story reaches its calm conclusion, dear listener, you may feel that same sense of completion settling within you, your thoughts slowing, your body heavy and comfortable, your breathing deep and natural, as though the night itself has guided you safely to this point. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for spending this peaceful time with Dream Nest Stories, where every tale is crafted to bring comfort, calm, and gentle rest. If this story has helped you unwind, if it has eased your thoughts or softened your evening, know that you are always welcome here, night after night, story after story. May your sleep be deep, your dreams be kind, and your mind be light as you drift fully into rest. And until we meet again, take care. Rest well, and allow the quiet of the night to hold you softly until morning.